Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and if you're subscribed to the channel, you know that every time a new commander comes into the game, I update my guides for what the best pairings are for that troop type. And here we are, new infantry commander. I get that not too long ago, maybe 3 months ago, not even, we got William Wallace, we got Skippy A, but here we are with Ragnar Prime, and he throws a huge wrench in what the best pairings perhaps are, and we really need to talk about what those look like. So whether you're making 1, 2, or 3 infantry marches, whether you want to know the best talents, whether you want to know what formations are maybe worth investing in, it's hard to say these days, we'll go and get a look at all of that. So use the timestamps down below in the description to jump to the part you care about the most. I want to start with the best infantry pairings. And before we do, I just want to point out something very, very, very important, which is that Ragnar really only comes into stride when he is completely maxed. In other words, you need his expertise. His expertise is insane amounts of damage factor, but if you don't have the expertise, too bad, so sad, you're missing a lot of his punch. Other commanders you do not need to have completely maxed. In fact, I will point out, because we're going to talk about these hero pairings in just a minute, that a commander like the original Skippy Prime has very, very little at all that he's offering on his expertise. 10% more skill damage is next to nothing. 30% more rage if your current target is silenced is not relevant for a lot of people these days, or at least it won't be very soon. So, I don't know, are you benching your Guan? I made a video about that. Let's go now and get a look at how I'd shape up these best pairings. Here we are in Tier Maker, a tool I've used many times in the past, and it's kind of funny, Omniarch also made a video today about a similar topic, and he and I often have what he calls content brain, where we think about the same sorts of things, but really, look, I used to work in product management, like, we understand who our audiences are and what they want to know, and what people want to know is, am I investing in Ragnar or not? So, to answer that question, it all depends on what commanders you have and where you want to put sculptures and how many infantry marches you run. And what do you think the future direction of infantry is actually going to be? I couldn't tell you, but what I can tell you is we know Liu Cha is going to be the biggest part of the best infantry march that can be made in the game. Now, the question then becomes, who do you pair with Liu Cha? I think the best you can do is a William Wallace primary, and that thing slaps. And the further you get with Arch formation and your progression with that formation, the better it will do. But even on my restart account, which has very mid-tier armaments, I am cooking. Best reports I've got with this combo. Now, that said, if you didn't use Wallace, okay, you could use Alexander the Great. Liu Cha Alexander the Great absolutely slaps. If you have Skippy, you can use Skippy as the primary, Liu Cha as the secondary. This also is really, really outstanding. Quite frankly, you have lots of options here. One thing I will say is that if you have not maxed any of those commanders, I don't actually know if the best march you could make would be putting Ragnar Prime in the mix. The weirdness here is that their talents are not very synergistic at all. You've got a smite damage dealer, and you've got a rage and skill damage hungry commander over here. They're doing two very different things. I think you'd find a way to use Liu Cha as the primary, and that's like sort of better, but I think it's very intentional that they have this sort of anti-synergy that's very strong between them, where one does care about normal damage, the other does care about skill damage, and their talents sort of don't really maximally benefit each other. And that's the nature of the formation system and the way that that works. So I think we still live in the realm where Skippy ends up being the way to go if you're making only one march. And the reason I like the Skippy is because he does a 30% health debuff. If I have 5 to 7 marches taking advantage of a 30% health debuff, that's pretty good. So to me, I think that's worth because of the scalability of that debuff. Plus, he does instant proc damage over time. Plus, he does shielding to him and 2 friends. Like, he does cool stuff. So I think if I were picking one march, this is probably it. All right. But once we get to 2 marches, things get really, really interesting. So at that point, Ragnar Prime is absolutely goated. And in our testing, we found Ragnar Prime Skippy Secondary was the way to go. And I would say the best march you could make then with your Liu Chat is Wallace with Liu Chat. And the Wallace Liu Chat, by the way, absolutely crushed the Ragnar Skippy in our testing. So I'm not saying that necessarily makes it a better march. I mean, it does mitigate a lot or pass through a lot of the skill damage. So it mitigates a lot of what Skippy is doing. But suffice to say, these are two very powerful combos and routes. You could also continue to use Alexander the Great with Liu Chat, and that would be absolutely phenomenal. And I think this becomes your best 2 infantry marches that you can make in Rise of Kingdoms. For most people, they are not going to go any further than 2 infantry marches. They're good. That's it. GG's. All right. But from here, what if you were making 3 infantry marches? Now, here's where things get interesting. You see, it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to use Guan, obviously, because Guan is amazing. And from there, it's kind of like, well, who do you use as a secondary? And I think Skippy and Guan are such a good pairing. We know this to be true. You probably put them together, which leaves Ragnar in a bit of a bind. You could put Sargon in the mix, and I think that would be fine, but Sargon's kind of mid in the open field. You could use Tariq ibn Ziyad. I think that could also be fine. And hilariously, I put a couple other commanders in here, Mehmed, Honda, and Caesar, which okay, I don't know that you'd use those in advanced rosters, but there is some synergy here. Like Honda Tadakatsu, well, he gives you more troops. More troops means you'll deal more skill damage. Because, damage factors scales off the number of troops you have. He does do damage over time. So there's actually synergy here with latent power. Your skill damage does ramp up on the 4th skill as you lose troops. There are synergies there that are better than you would think. I don't love it. Okay, I don't love it. The other option would be, well, you could drop down Alexander the Great. And I think that's probably a fine way to run all of that, all right? If you were doing 3 infantry, some combination here with Ragnar would be the play. But Ragnar is definitely in the mix and Guan comes back. But if we reset things a little bit and talk about the future of the game, now things get funky. Because when we look at a 2-march combo, if you decide to go from having a Guan Skippy and you say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make Ragnar. I'm gonna do this thing, all right? You bench your Guan, all right? And you run your combo like this. What happens next? In other words, are we going to get another normal attack damage smite commander, or are we going to get another skill damage commander? Because if we get another smite commander, it gets a little bit weird. Who do you bench here? Maybe it ends up being the Wallace. Okay. And then you pair with Liu Che. That is a possibility for a new smite commander that shows up. Who do we use as a placeholder for new smite commander? Honestly, we'll use Wu Zetian, right? New smite commander shows up. Maybe it's Liu Che and Wu Zetian. I don't know, right? Wu Zetian, okay, I gotta stop saying that. But maybe it's Liu Che and the new commander, and you just keep this combo the same. All right. The other alternative would be, well, gosh, the smite damage is so good that what I really want to do is I want to use Liu Che and Alex again. I want to bench the Skippy, bench this other guy over here, and I want to use the new commander and Wallace. Maybe something like that, right? Because we know Liu Che Alex absolutely slaps. And if we get some new AoE smite commander, it could be that 2 smite marches is just absolutely insane. And that might be the way to go, right? So that's the real head scratcher for the Ragnar. If you think the game is maybe headed in this direction and you've already got a Wallace and you've already got an Alex, are we going in the direction of 2 infantry smite marches? I don't know. If the game goes in a different direction, all right, and we get a new skill damage commander, well, things get kind of interesting then as well, right? Because either you're going to bench the Wallace, or more likely, most people are using Alex. So Alex hits the bench. you use the Skippy and Liu Che together, right? And then new skill damage commander gets paired with Ragnar. And then you're big chillin', right? So it's funny because I'm proposing you probably end up going back to Skippy and Liu Che. It all depends on like what you have and what you think the game will do. And I don't know what the game will do. What I can say, and I know this like drives people nuts whenever I talk about Trajan, but let me just talk about Trajan for a minute. When they released Trajan, the game design sent players in a direction of building open field leadership. And no, I don't think this is the way to do that. I don't think the Ragnar with Trajan is it. I mean, test it, but I don't think that's it, okay? And I don't think Ragnar is intended to be the solution for this. But again, I'd have to test a lot more to figure that out. Anyways, point I'm trying to make is the game sent players in a direction of leadership for open field. Okay, that's not just true with Trajan. Like, we saw that with Honda. The difference is that most people use Honda as the secondary, and he never really got the support he needed to be a primary, which is a huge bummer. But whatever. So we bench this Honda idea. We put Trajan aside for a minute, and the point I'm trying to make is in this next leadership cycle, we've historically been getting garrisons, okay? We get garrisons like, I don't know, do I have him on this list? Where's he at? Hera is somewhere. We got Lapu Lapu, which in my eyes, yeah, I mean, maybe for city defense it's a thing, but for flags it was a total dud. When we got Lapu Lapu, I was really scratching my head because like this is the moment in time when we should have gotten a like that I think a leadership rally is a thing, but like a versatile rally or a versatile, open field leadership thing. Like we didn't get that. We got another garrison. And wait, where is Hera? Oh, here's Hera, right? We had Hera in the past. So, the question is, was open field leadership a full dead end? And I think the answer is probably yes, right? If you went down the Trajan meta pathway that, I think we're dead ended. Maybe not. I don't know. But it means at least still meta in Canyon, the thing that doesn't really matter, but feels like it matters. I'm mentioning all of this because maybe we get some leadership-based commander, and that's supposed to pair with Ragnar. And that could be theoretically right around the corner, right? Aren't we due soonish for some new commanders for that? I think we are, because you can see by the order I added these. This is probably the order they came in the game, but I've got the ranged commanders over here, then cavalry, and we got archers, and besides this stuff I rearranged at the end, like, I think it's time for some leadership stuff? Question mark? The infantry I pulled up here. So, those are the possible directions the game could go. Either we're going to get infantry only far-ish in the future, and they're going to be smite, or we're going to get infantry and it's going to be skill damage, or we're going to get something leadership-y, and you put Ragnar with that leadership commander, and perhaps that is gangbusters. And the only reason I sort of push on that leadership direction is because Ragnar has the accessory, certainly in his special KVK, where like he counts as having whatever troop type you need, which is kind of cool. The exact language of that accessory obviously reads a little bit different than that, but I'm not in that KVK yet, so I couldn't tell you what that is. So all that to say, where's my money going on what to do? Jeez, this is kind of a tough one. So you can see here my combos today include the Guan. Will I work on the Ragnar? I might just chill. And the only reason I would just chill, personally, is not because Ragnar isn't an upgrade. He's a huge upgrade. I just made a video about that. But the reason is, first of all, I don't know how I'm getting his sculptures. It'll be kind of pricey to just 690 him with universals. But second of all, even if there is some event that gives you some extra sculptures, or even if they put them on a wheel, which I don't think they intend to do, the weirdness is with the formations. And I just don't know where formations are going and what the future of that's going to be. I think the most likely thing that could happen for the future is we get some new Smite commander. I bench the Guan. I bring like Liu Che. I keep Liu Che where he is. Yeah, use the Skippy. I do something like this, right? It's Wallace plus new AoE Smite commander. I just assume it's an AoE Smite commander because this open fielder was not AoE. So unless they do another single target open fielder, which feels unlikely, I think this is what I plan to do with infantry. Never mind my third march, which I have no clue what I'm doing with Trajan in that gear. GG's. Let's jump in game a little bit and talk about these formations, shall we? All right, so formations. I think that an arch formation, if you're an infantry player, is obviously a really great investment. This is my canyon setup, slightly different from what I would use for open field, but the synergy with Liu Che is just absolutely insane. I think if I were betting money, this is the direction that infantry will continue to go, is this smite direction rather than a skill damage direction, because we still don't have a complete pair for an infantry smite garrison. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think so. So that will be my recommendation if you care a lot about infantry. But if you keep your Liu Che march sort of skill damage focused, you continue to use the Skippy or an Alex, like one commander at least that cares about skill damage, then what you could do is just have one wedge set. And if you think Ragnar is pointing to the future direction of infantry, work on your wedge. And that's the way to go. And the beautiful thing about wedge is that it does work for many troop types, although that is getting kind of wacky these days, and maybe combo is going to be going to cavalry or leadership soon. I could not tell you. I could not tell you about that direction. But what I can do is very briefly do a checkup on talents. And these, I think, are very widely accepted to be the meta here. So if you're building your Liu Che, especially if you're going to be pairing with like Alexander the Great, you're going the sort of smite damage route, this is the build that you want to use. Good amount of march speed. This is the build I would use on your Liu Che. For your Guan Yu, it's all about rage these days. So we take the full skill tree, we go up top, get some infantry talents, and get a little bit of march speed. Really exceptional build. Open field is all about generating rage today, so that's where you want to be. William Wallace. Woo! He cooks, man. I think this might be my rally build. Let's see here if I labeled it. I labeled it page 1. GG. So this build works well for a couple reasons. I am missing some march speed, which I did feel like I was missing. If I were doing this again, I'd drop the 3 points in Pack a Punch and put them into march speed, or even 1 point into Undying Fury. And what I think you must get is fight or flight. And like almost the entire reason to use Wallace as a primary at all is that he turns Liu Che into an AoE rage debuffing monster, which is kind of disgusting. Like 45 rage stripped from 5 enemy marches is really, really, really powerful. So that alone gives your Wallace a very powerful debuff that, like, yeah, he doesn't have a big debuff in his skills, but he does in his talents, which is pretty special. He does also do a little bit of shielding, but it's hard to really notice the effect of his shielding ability. Where is that? That's not his second skill. Yeah, I think it's right here. Whenever this commander's troop deals smite damage, you can do more smite damage. Oh, it's his expertise. Whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill or is slowed, it dispels also effects from up to 3 nearby allies. That's that's kind of nice too. I forget about that a lot. And then grants them a mighty shield. Damage factor 1000. That's a lot of shielding. 3000 shielding factor in total? I mean, that's a lot of shielding factor. Only once every 10 seconds, but he does do group stuff, but I won't pretend it's nearly as good as just straight up AoE damage. That is always the jam. That is always the jam. When we continue on with talents here, who else do we need to get a look at? I don't think you're ever going to use Alexander the Great as a primary. Let's switch over here to infantry. I think we covered pretty much all the different talent combinations we would need to cover in this video. I guess Skippy build. We didn't cover this. 2 points in Rejuvenate, because there's a rage cap of 220. So the amount of rage you will generate by just hitting something plus being hit Plus from this, you're pretty much capping out. So 2 points is all you need over there. I don't think you really need Cage of Thorns. At this point, Cage of Thorns is kind of just fueling William Wallace's ? I think this is a pretty solid build. I've used this for a long time. Been very happy with the results. All right. And if you were going to be building Ragnar, I would put points onto him very, very similar to what I did on Guan. So I would go kind of like this. So what Latent Power does is it enhances your damage over time effects. And this is a really meaningful buff, I think, for specifically Ragnar, because Ragnar, if you have him expertised, is going to be doing 1,800 damage over time. It's pretty good. I think it's worth the talent points to squeeze out more damage, especially if you end up pairing with some other commander that does damage over time. Like, I don't know, my recommendation is Skippy, right over here, right? There's the damage factor over time to an enemy. Brutal. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. Alternatively, if you're looking for more information about infantry, specifically equipment, you can check out my last infantry pairing video. And it is like kind of funny that I did this video not only 2 months, it's just like 2 months ago, right? Like just about 2 months ago. Anyways, I'm not going to cover equipment again because it hasn't changed since the time that I recorded that video. I'll have that card in the end screen. Check it out. Go right to the timestamp. You can check out equipment. That'll give you a jump start on exactly what to craft.